Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to A Conversation with. And my name is Floyd Marshall Jr. I am your humble host. It has been a minute, but I am back, and this is actually my first podcast of 2024. And I'm extremely excited because today I am joined by Philadelphia's own Mary Patel-Gallagher, who wrote and created the thriller psychological horror film Holiday. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, Miss Gallagher, welcome to A Conversation with. How are you?
How are you? Thanks for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. So, Philadelphia native.
That's right.
That's awesome. So I normally like to start off by asking my guests how they actually got their start in the business. So how do you go from being a journalist, a political journalist in Philadelphia, to a filmmaker in Vegas? How did you get your start in the business?
Well, you know, being a political reporter it was 15 years. Mm-hmm. Politics is theater, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of it is. But what happened was I did a documentary called Electile Dysfunction about the apathy of the American voter. And so I did that. It took me 2 years, and it culminated with the presidential election of Barack Obama and John McCain. But I used the backdrop at that point. There was a big Senate race that was watched nationally between Rick Santorum and Bob Casey. So I used that campaign as a template for the backdrop of the film and interviewed voters all over the states. Mm-hmm. and different categories. You know, I had a celebrity section about how the celebrity hurt or help a candidate. I had all kinds of interviews. I had so much content, it was hard to narrow it down to 2 hours. And it premiered on the Philadelphia Film Festival in April 2008. And then I sold it to Cinema Libre, and it was on Netflix for about 2 years. And then now it's on YouTube. You can watch it for free, Electile Dysfunction. So, but I liked the business part of the film industry. And I had also been an advisory member on the board of the Philadelphia Film Festival. That back then it was run by TLA Entertainment Group. So I had, at that time, I lived in Old City. I had one of those big old lofts that was a factory.
Okay.
And so I used to have, for the festivals, they had two every year, one in April and one in July. And I would do parties at my house, like an in-kind event. You know, things were donated. I donated the space, and I got to meet a lot of people in the business side of film. Not, met the actors, but also the producers and things like that. So I had been producing debates for Comcast, political debate. So I understood how producing worked. It's just a matter of putting the right elements together. But again, these were, it wasn't feature. It was, documentary or actual live television. So when my paper got sold, and as you know, the newspaper business has changed so much.
Yes.
Everybody so my column was downsized or cut basically. And so I said to myself, so now this was 2000, now we're in 2009. So I decided to do a career change and start to do some feature film. But you can't do that in Philadelphia at the moment. Maybe you can. Back then you couldn't. Maybe now it's changed. But LA was where you had to go. It would be LA or New York. So I went to LA, and I had worked on some bigger projects, not mine, but other people's. And then I decided after a time that might be good to do my own feature. So I worked on that a couple years, and I shot it last year. Actually, no, 2 years ago. I shot it. Let me think. No, wait. So we're in 2024 now. I shot it in April 2022. It came out July 2023. The end of July came out. Yeah. And it's on Amazon and Tubi. And so that was my first feature, and I'm working on a second. But it takes, for an independent filmmaker, today it's good and it's bad, because you have so many opportunity now that you wouldn't have before, because there's so many platforms you can show your work. Mm-hmm. But the other side of it is it's still dominated by corporations. Mm-hmm. So all these platforms are owned by corporations, and they own many. So it's challenging to be an indie filmmaker. I'm not saying that you can't do it. You just have to navigate through and figure out, like A4 is an independent film studio per se. They're big. But if you're smaller scale, used to be back in the day, like Robert Rodriguez, he shot a film based loosely on his life in Mexico. Mm-hmm. And then Quentin Tarantino saw it. We're going back 25 years ago. And then repackaged it, put Johnny Depp in it, and all, those stories are still around, although not as much. But so getting back to about film. So journalism, a lot of journalists, they just took the buyouts and left and what have you, and some wrote books. But I think for me, getting into film was a good segue out of that industry. I am planning now on writing Hollis Day the book. Mm. So that's most of the time you get the book and then the movie, but I've seen some situations where you do the movie and then the book. Mm. So I'm going to try that out.
Oh, okay. So you moved to LA. So how do you end up in Vegas? How did that happen?
So when I was in LA, I was in Long Beach, and I was there for a couple of years. And then I had developed all my contacts over a period of time back in Philadelphia. And then I met my husband there in Long Beach, who had a businesses there, and he had a bar in San Diego, Irish pub. He's from Ireland. Hmm. So I ended up moving to San Diego for a few years. We went down there, and then I got married, and then he sold his bar, and we were looking I like California, but a lot of people are moving from California for all kinds of reasons. Taxes, very high property taxes, very high personal income tax. Mm-hmm. Nevada has no personal income tax. And you can get a really nice property for a fraction of what you pay in California. In California, you can't buy a garage for $500,000.
Wow.
It's gotten really, really, all the, Joe Rogan left California, moved to Texas. People are moving to Texas, Nevada, and Florida, but mostly staying in the West Coast. Mark Wahlberg moved. He's in Nevada now. He wants to make it another film. He's in Vegas. He wants to make it another film, another Hollywood. Jeremy Renner lives in Nevada. So people are moving for those kind of reasons, because why give half your money to taxes, because that's basically what it's becoming. But California is a beautiful state. It's got a lot going for it. It's just, I think at this point, people are really rethinking their lifestyle and how much money they really want to spend on taxes and things like that. And it's all kinds of people, are leaving. So we left just for lifestyle change. And we're close to California. Mm-hmm. So it's not like I can't get there in 5 hours if we drove.
Right.
It's a 45-minute flight. So it's not like I'm so far removed.
Right.
It's just like shooting a film here was much cheaper. I shot Hollis Day takes place in San Diego, but I shot it here. I actually shot it in my house.
Oh, really?
I'm sitting in one of the scenes now in my, and crew was challenging because it's not a film town yet, so in California, you can pick up crew everywhere all day long, right? In LA, not in San Diego. I took a couple years break from doing anything when I was in San Diego because it's not a film town, and it was hard to put some things together down there. I'm not sure why, it just was. When I moved here, I started up again, and I got my actors. Some of them were from LA and some of them were from here.
Okay. Okay. So what part of San Diego did you guys live in? Because I was stationed in San Diego for 4 years.
Oh, okay. So we lived in Point Loma.
Okay.
And my husband's bar, Gallagher's Irish Pub, Eugene Gallagher's Irish Pub, was in Ocean Beach.
Nice.
So he had a lot of Navy customers because there's 3 Navy bases down there.
Yeah, I was stationed on North Island, Coronado.
Oh, well, then that's gorgeous.
Yeah, but this is going, oh my gosh, this is going back over 30 years. So I'm sure it's changed quite a bit. Because I was stationed from 85 to 88. Yeah. So
the bases are, it's always been, it's a huge Navy town, Coronado, yes. And is an absolutely stunning island.
Beautiful.
You just take the bridge over. Yeah. But you can't touch those places today they're 5 million, wow. Those homes. I mean, wow. It's untouchable. Now, if you bought back in 85, you're good. Yeah. But now, no. And every time you sell a place, the taxes go, if you used to say you bought a place in 85, Coronado, mm-hmm. You'd be paying the same taxes that you started with in 85 now.
Wow.
If you change it, new owner comes in, their taxes are quadrupled.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
And that's the problem.
And maybe that's one of the reasons why it's not, because, it's not a film town. No tax breaks.
No tax breaks. You'd think California would have tax breaks all up and down the road. No, I know Governor Schwarzenegger, when he was Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was governor, he tried, mm-hmm. but the legislator wouldn't pass it. There aren't really that many tax breaks in Nevada. They're trying to pass it. I know those 2 actors I mentioned, Mark Wahlberg and Jeremy Renner, went to the legislator back last year and tried to ask them to give a tax incentive. It was declined. They're going to revisit it. I think you have to spend at least $1 million on production to get a break. Now, I know Pennsylvania for a long time had great tax breaks. Everything was shot there.
Yes.
Right? So that was under Ed Rendell's initiative. Former mayor, Florida Governor Ed Rendell, and then the legislature approved it. So there was a lot of great filming going on there, tax incentives for filmmakers. I know M. Night Shyamalan took advantage of all those.
Yeah, they had phenomenal, and then something happened, and now there are barely any. So a lot of the films that would normally come here end up not coming here simply because of that. And especially, like you were mentioning earlier, someone in the independent film space. It's okay for a major studio to come here and shoot, when Sylvester shot his last Rocky film here. Okay, mm-hmm. They can do that.
Right.
But for someone in, let's say, a $500,000 $1 million range, it's a stretch. So they usually end up going to Canada. But really mm-hmm. quickly, you talked about Vegas not being that much of a film town. Now, is it as far as finding crew? Is it finding actors? Or
yes.
Is it just the whole gamut of everything?
It's everything. And they have a film office here, and it's very supportive and very helpful. They give you, a list of locations. They'll give you suggestions for things. But when you start to dig through and you contact crew they have several social media sites for actors and crew in Las Vegas. But when you start talking to them, you find they don't live here. They're in California, they're in Texas, and then you have to pay for the crew to stay here. It doesn't make financial sense. Like in California, they're there. They're on the corner. In LA, you can find them. Actors, my film had 6 actors. That was it. And so I already had them planned out before, and 2 lived here, and the other 3 were in California, and 1 came from New York. but and even with the actors, like you'll find they'll put their resumes up and and everything, and their pitch reels. They don't live here, so it doesn't help you to bring in everybody. I mean, you might as well just go shoot it in California, and just go relocate yourself there. But locations in California are more expensive. Permits are more expensive. It's just a different dynamic. Here, you don't. I mean, you could get a permit if you wanted to shoot on the street. It's nothing to get it. They do help you. I mean, I know Mark Wahlberg just shot his film Family Plan here on the Strip. It's on Apple right now.
I just watched it. I just watched it the other night.
Yeah. So but he probably got a lot of help from, the casinos and things like that. You can work deals, and it was good, good for him, good for everybody. It was a funny film, it was funny little family film. Did you like it? I thought it was cute. Yeah.
It was good. It was good.
Yeah.
Me and my wife watched this. It was a good cable movie. It was nice. Yeah, it was nice.
So, you can work on things and projects and make deals with people, but again, it's finding talent and crew that's the most challenging part of it. So that's probably the downside of shooting here. I know there was a horror movie shot here by big Blumhouse.
Mm-hmm.
Blumhouse shot a horror movie out in one of the old abandoned casinos way out in the desert somewhere. He shot that whole thing out there, and they all talked about that. But they shoot one big thing and it gets massive press,
Mm-hmm.
When Mark Wahlberg screened his film at the Cosmopolitan Casino Theater. They have a big theater in there. And he screened his film in there, and it was all talked about for days and days. But in LA, that goes on every day. There's always some, I mean, not lately with the strike and all last year, but normally there's several premieres going on in Grauman's Theater down there and different Lamley theaters and things like that. It's just part of the ambiance of that part of the LA, but not here so much. But who knows what'll happen? The legislator gets convinced that they should give breaks. Then you'll see production. You'll see industry leaving California. They want to build another Universal theme park down here. They're talking about that down in the Arts District, which is past Fremont Street, the old Vegas, the original Vegas. Yeah. So there's the district arts. They created this whole arts district down there. So they want to put another Universal studio down there. Now, that's a theme park, right? It's not necessarily a film studio, but then the film studio could be attached to it. There was discussion that some of these big studios would move their operations here for tax reasons, which is why we all left California. If I'm being taxed, don't you think they're being taxed too? I mean, they're all getting taxed. So that's a possibility. I don't know what's happening yet with that, but there's talk. These things take time and years to develop. But you can shoot anywhere. If you can shoot a film anywhere, if you just have the wherewithal to bring the right people in. And, of course, there's all that overseas production, too. I mean, Ireland was huge with tax credits. Mm-hmm. Game of Thrones was shot all 10 years that was on the air? It says all was shot in Northern Ireland. Mm-hmm. If you look up any movie, you'll find a lot of it is shot in other places. Like I watched, this is going back earlier last year, but Liam Neeson's film Marlowe about the detective, right? Raymond Chandler book took place in LA in 1939. It was all shot in Ireland. The interiors and the exteriors were shot in Barcelona to make it look like LA. And why was that? We could have all shot in LA. No, it's because they got a big tax break from those two countries.
Same thing with Canada. You have a lot of major productions being shot in Canada for the exact same reason. So I guess California is really going to have to figure something out if they want to continue to be the epicenter of the film world, because as you said, there are so many places where you can shoot a film, and the way the some of these departments are, they can make anywhere you are look like a specific location, and unless someone tells you where it was shot, you would absolutely have no clue. But let's I have a question regarding Holiday. Now, where did you come up with the concept of Holiday? How did that come about?
Well, I was trying to, being low budget, I was trying to think of, one location, right? So a lot of horror movies take place in one location. Mostly it's a house or some other, haunted entity.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite movies was the John Carpenter Halloween, first one. So that took place mostly in the house. So I have the house, right? So I'm thinking, okay, so how is this going to play out? So I started thinking about people who don't know each other. So the storyline is two couples who don't know each other double book a vacation rental house in San Diego, and strange things start to happen. So how do these people get in the house? Well, they double book this vacation rental, and they don't know each other, and they decide to stay because it's Comic-Con weekend and there's no place else open, right? So they're there. And then I wanted to add in some, so what's happening here? Who's the stalker? Who's the creep in the room? Well, I wanted something different than a slasher. I didn't want another Halloween, but I wanted the suspense of the Halloween, because remember, I don't have CGI and I don't have special effects. And Halloween 1 had none of that. That movie was 1978, came out 1978 or 77. But back then they didn't have the technology, but it was scary. It was because it was lighting and music, right? That was what I wanted to have. And then I'm thinking, well, guy with the knife is passé. We've all seen that. Well, something different. What creatures could it be? So one of the couples, I made them Irish, from Ireland, and the other, they were from New York. So in Ireland, they have a lot of ghosts and spirits and things like that. So I drew on that. I'm Irish nationality. My parents came, they came a very long time ago in the 1700s, but my DNA shows that's all I've ever been. They only married down the line. So I have all this heritage of all these stories that I used to hear over the years as a child from different relatives about druids and banshees. So druid is a Celtic priest. And back then he was a consult to the lords of Ireland. Didn't have kings. They just had people that were elected as their leader. So and then there's bad druids, and then banshees, which if you I read the Irish Times, people still claim they hear the banshee. When you hear the banshee wail, it means someone's going to die. Right. Close to you or someone that you know. And they still swear by this, and there's still reports on this, and in the newspapers today in Ireland, the current papers. So, banshee is a woman, usually had been a very beautiful woman who had met a horrible death, and her fate is to roam and just sort of scream. You hear her. If you hear her, you don't want to hear her. So I had those characters. So they're going to be the ones that are doing this. I don't want to give too much away because the whole premise leads up to the very end. But so that's how I sort of developed this. And then everything leads up to that part of it. I also made it very, very slow burn because Hitchcock is one of my favorite writer-directors. So I wrote it and directed it.
Oh, really?
And I produced it. Yeah.
Wow.
So everything leads up to the end. And in between, so you're getting to know these characters, and and there's twists and turns, and like Hitchcock used to have all these subplots in there. So I put some subplots in. It's only 90 minutes. But at the end, that's the whole movie leads up to the end. And I wrote it 3 weeks. I just wrote it out. I sent the script out. They already knew. The actors already knew. I've known some of them for a long time, and they already kind of knew what this was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
But I just put the dialogue in, and we shot in 6 days.
Wow. A feature-length film in 6 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how long were the shoot days?
Well, they were staggered because some were day and some were night shoots. So we do the day shoots. So the way it works in a film is it's never shot in sequence.
Right.
You're going to shoot everything, and if you have 4 scenes in one room, you're going to shoot all those scenes at once, whether it be from the beginning or the middle or the end. And you'll do all the costume change and all that will change, but the location will not. Why? Because it's very hard. It takes a long time to move the lights and set up the scene. So you stick with what's there at the moment. And then, So we had the outside scene shot, then we'll do the inside. Then we had the outside. So we had to wait. So I shot in mid-April. So it really didn't get dark till maybe almost 8:00, because we're ahead here where we are. It gets lighter earlier than maybe where you are. So we had to wait till it got dark to do that. And then I think one night we shot up until 3 a.m. So, but we had all this in between time of waiting around, and like that's the out of town actors. I put them up in a rented house not far from here, and the crew all lived here, and they just went home and came back.
Okay.
So, and then you had I had, catered meals come in, and, they would come in for that. But if you're organized and you have everything down, we're going to shoot scenes 5, 9, and 14 from 2 to 5, and then all morning, but you're not going to be doing anything. You're just going to be relaxing or doing whatever you want to do. But people still came to the house because that's where the food was. And so the meals were so like they could hang out. They could, hang out in the bedrooms or whatever, relax. They didn't necessarily have to be gone all morning. So yeah, the last day we shot, the last scene we shot was in one of the bathrooms, and that took a very long time for some reason. I think it was sound or lighting issues or something like that, but it took a long time. And then we started editing in May, and the editing took a while. I would have liked to have had that movie out in like February of last year, but it wasn't ready. I sent a rough cut over to the distributor in October, and we had to make some changes. The music had to be changed. Music is very important in a horror movie. Some of the scenes had to be cut a bit out. We had to do something. Mostly it was the music, and we had to cut back on some of the scenes. What I was trying to avoid was a reshoot.
Okay.
Because reshoots are expensive and it's hard to get everyone back, and they were all off on other jobs. My DP was in the Philippines somewhere doing something over there, and one of my other actors, she's from Scotland originally. Well, her father's Irish, her mother's Scottish. She had already gone off to Glasgow, so I couldn't. So I had to work with what I had. I think post-production, people don't realize that it's so important, even more important and as important as the shoot. So we got new music, changed it out, and then did another cut that was passed in February. And so then it went for the July release, which is good because horror should come out winter, summer, and of course fall. But fall, you get all of it. You get all those movies. I wouldn't say I'm a horror movie. I'd say I'm more of a thriller. Mm-hmm. They announced it as a horror movie, but I say it's more of a thriller, definitely more of a thriller.
So more of a psychological thriller. And I'm with you with that. I can kind of leave the slasher films alone, because it's so obvious. I would rather you excuse my French, scare the shit out of me, and thinking about what's going to happen. Because in my opinion, your imagination is so much more imaginative than someone getting chopped up by a knife, but you sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, what's about to happen? Everything starts running through your mind. So were you thinking of that when you were writing it, that your thing was you wanted the audience to kind of come to some conclusions on their own?
Um, no, I think, no, it's pretty clear what happens.
Hmm.
But I didn't want to have any giveaways. I didn't want any clues. I wanted it to be so, I have no idea who this is,
Hmm.
kind of thing. And those movies are coming back in vogue. I had thought about this for a couple years, but I'm seeing now that they had been very popular for a while. Um, and now uh, they weren't, and now they are. Like the most recent one I can think of is Saltburn. That's a twisty psychological thriller. It was written and directed by a woman, and it's about a young man who goes to Oxford, and he meets up with a very wealthy student who invites him back to his home and um, it's an indie film, but it's a big studio distributed, but it was in theaters for a month. I think it's on Netflix or Amazon now, but it's a psychological thriller. And I think that, they're coming back where people want to see that. People are still caught up though in the instant action, massive CGI. And I really respect Jason Momoa as an actor, Aquaman, right?
Hmm.
But that made like huge numbers over Christmas weekend. Well, that was about $250 million movie.
Hmm.
So of course it's gonna, but some of them don't do well. Some action movies like that don't do well, but it's becoming the norm to have 200, 250. I mean, we watched Ferrari, which was considered an art house film, by the way.
Hmm.
It went back and had a lot of, that was a very large budget, I think also about 250, but it's a period piece. They had to go and get all those cars from that time frame. Acting was superb. I thought Adam Driver and Penelope Cruz, who played his wife, I thought the acting was phenomenal. There's a lot of racing scenes. But I think the critics compared it to Ford versus Ferrari, that film, if you remember that one. That was a
Yes.
big car action film, and everyone loved that because there was a lot of car action and things. And this was more, I mean, you had the big race at the end, but a lot of it was about his life and that period of time in his life, Ferrari's life. So, and then of course there was Napoleon, which was another big budget, and there's been many, many Napoleon movies. So it's kind of hard to gauge what people like. And that's the hardest challenge of being a filmmaker, whether you're a little indie person like me or if you're a giant mega studio. It's very hard to see what are people going to like. Like, who knew that everybody would like a movie about a bomb, right? Oppenheimer,
Hmm.
3-hour film, very technical and very detailed, but it was a huge hit. Whether it's Barbie already had a built-in audience because
Hmm.
of Barbie, right? However, what Greta Gerwig did, the writer-director, put a twist on it, made it a feminist movie, whereas Barbie kind of woke up, right? And said, oh, well, there's more to life than just Ken and wearing pink. So that could have gone in either direction. That could have gone south.
Very much so. I
With
watched that a
all,
few days ago as well. That was an interesting film.
yes. So
That
it's
was a
hard to
very
say.
interesting film.
It's hard to say what people are going to like. I watched Elvis. It came out last year. I thought it was so highly stylized. I loved the music portion of it, but it was just so stylized. And I much preferred Priscilla.
Hmm.
Uh, So again, it's very hard to tell what anyone's going to like, an audience is going to like. And that's why it's hard to be a film investor, because, it's very, very hard to see what people are going to like or not like. And it's a huge risk. It's not like building a hotel or a mall and that kind of investment where who your demographic is going to be. Right. what each condo is going to cost, right? So that's a lot of that is very interesting to me in terms of, but if you do well, you can do well. I'm working on another film. Mickey Mouse is back in public domain now.
Now that should be interesting. That should be interesting.
There's 2 other creep movies out. There's coming out with him as a terror horrifying mouse. Just like the Winnie the Pooh movie.
I keep hearing about that, but I have not seen it yet. I'm going to definitely have to look that one up.
Yeah, so that came out. That was out of the gate early last year. So that producer of that film is actually a friend of my distributor. And he had told me about this that he glammed onto this right away and had it shot and out the door before anybody else could. And it made quite a bit of money. Pooh's a slasher, and he and Eeyore go around, kill all these people. It depends on what you like to watch. It's not my cup.
Even if you don't like to watch it, the fact that if you grew up knowing anything about Winnie the Pooh, and then you hear that there's a movie out with Winnie the Pooh going around killing people. Even if you don't you're going to watch that because you want to see what the heck is going on with Winnie the Pooh Winnie and Tigger going around killing people. I mean, that in itself that's the what is that? That's the log line right there.
Oh, I know. It's very, very strange because to me, it's sort of like, A.A. Milne, what was it, when did he write that? 1921? Mm-hmm. And those books were, children, children's favorites.
Right.
You read it, your mother read it at bedtime. Pooh was everywhere. Stuffed Pooh Bears, Eeyore, Tigger, all those. So, the macabre, but people we've all seen the Satan, Santa Claus, right? Going back to The Exorcist, they were, demonizing, the statues in the church. Mm-hmm. It was a very graphic, horrifying scene. That went on for a while. That was popular. Exorcist movies came back. For a while, the Pope's Exorcist with Russell Crowe was big, came out last summer, and then it went away. It's trends. The thing about horror is you always have to find something that hasn't been done already, right? So horror is what? Horror could be supernatural horror, or it could be human horror. To me, human horror is worse because you're sitting next to the devil, right? Mm-hmm. The devil is here on earth. If in this person, a lot of us may or may not see anything, ghosts or something in our lives. Some people swear up and down they've seen supernatural creatures. And you had all those paranormal films, remember? Objects flying through and poltergeists and all that kind of stuff. But to me, the person that does these horror things is worse, because if you want horror, just listen to the news.
Yes.
Right? Listen to what people are doing. So, Psycho was based on sort of that premise. I think that was one of the first. And then you have all these others, American Psycho with Christian Bale. And then you have all these other movies where these insane people are doing these things. And so that could be considered horror. Versus the old horror of the day, which was werewolf, Wolfman, Frankenstein, Dracula.
Dracula.
All these supernatural creatures.
So horror in reality is different than horror in a creature who may or may not exist, depending on what you think. So horror has many dimensions. However, it's very hard to create new horror. Somebody who's not diabolical, like, Hannibal Lecter, for example, right? So he's horror, horrible. So you try to think of, characters as a filmmaker. You try to think of characters. I mean, I watched a film from 2017 called The Killing of the Sacred Deer, and that was diabolical, and it had just through his mind made people do things. So, but people like this stuff, they watch it. I don't know, the worse the better. I don't know. It was popular. The clown in the sewer was popular.
It was very good. It was very good.
That was Stephen King. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was listening to an interview you had done, and with that, is that why you're making Holiday a trilogy? Because there's an appetite for this type of thing?
So I'm meditating on that, or whether or not I'm worried that it may just have been a standalone film. I'm discussing this with my distributor I may do something different and then give it a rest on Holiday for a bit. I mean, it's not uncommon to have things like not, take a break, and you see things like later, like Sex in the City, as an example. 10 years later, they did a film, right? So it's not like it would be out of the realm. It also gives Holiday time for other people to see it. Right? Because I'm not a studio. And another thing about filmmaking is after you've done the post-production, you have what's called the advertising budget, right? So you have to, in order for people to watch your film, they have to know it's there. And so, I wish that some of the mainstream would, and we appreciate us indies, appreciate people like you allowing us to talk about our work. It gets the word out. I wish everybody would let all the filmmakers talk about their work so that everybody could know, and because there is a market for independent film. People get tired of commercial, they want to see something different and unique, so again, people like you are very important to people like me to get the word out.
Yeah. So with that, because this is a very tough business, this is your first feature film.
Yes.
First film, but your first feature film.
Yeah.
What would you tell someone who says, you know what, Mary, I think I want to become a filmmaker? What would you what advice would you give them?
Go for it. Go for it. And don't listen to the naysayers, because there's so many of them. There's so many people. Oh, what do you want to do that for? Oh, you'll never get anywhere. When I left Philly, moved to LA, everybody said to me, not everybody. I knew a lot of people back then, but some, lot. I'll say a lot. Say, oh, Mary, I'll see you back here in 5 years. Jeez. You're going to come back in 5 years. Or you're going to come back and I can't do it. And because a lot of people they can't, but doesn't mean that you shouldn't try. And I think people come out. I'm not the only one people have been coming to LA for hundreds of years since when did films start? When was the first film? 1900, 1910. People come out to LA, for all kinds of, for acting, singing, any entertainment businesses. Don't, if you feel you want to do it, you can go for it, but just know it takes a very long time. It takes a lot of patience, and you have to make the right connections. You got to start this stuff. I look back, I should have started this stuff probably in my 20s, but you don't know, today people go through different cycles of careers, and age has nothing. Good thing about producing and directing is, the older you get, the better you get at it, right? So I believe Martin Scorsese is 84, and Killers of the Flower Moon, excellent film. I don't know if you've seen it.
It's nominated for all kinds of awards, and so he's timeless, you could always start with, you could start at any point in your life, but you have to have the right connections, you have to have the right structure. Like, so if you have to, and here's another thing about getting back to Vegas or Nevada is that, in California, you would have these like groups of people who would, filmmaker collaboratives, or people you would like. That's why I like the film festival, because you had all these people who would, meet up for, film parties and film lunches and something. So you would collaborate and talk to people about things, and here you don't really have that. So if you need a structure, I know virtual is good, and I know, social media is good and stuff, but if you really want to do it, you might as well just do it, because then later you'll say, you know what, I could have done that. Right. I mean, and if you can't organize it, or for whatever reason, you can always say, you know what, I tried. But I think if you have the acumen to more or less, if you have the impetus that you want to do, like there must be something in you that makes you want to do it, other than just looking at TV and saying, oh, wow, I could do better than that. Well, maybe you could, so, but you have to get the right structure and the right elements together to do it. You just can't wake up today and say, oh, yes, I would like to do a film today. Well, how do I do that? Like, I remember in Philly for a long time, there was a lot of people who wanted to invest in films, right? And they were not in the business. It was like they were developers mostly, right? So this is going back in the early 2000s. And so they were throwing money at indie filmmakers to do these productions. And they were big, they were $1 million, $1.5 million and things like that. And some did well, some didn't, but everybody wanted to be in the film business. So they would start investing, right? So I don't know, you've heard of Lee Daniels?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Okay, so Lee is from West Philly originally, and he had done The Woodsman with Kevin Bacon.
Yes.
And then he did, it escapes me, but it was a thriller. It was shot in Rittenhouse Square Park, and it had Helen Mirren and Cuba Gooding Jr. in it. And
gosh, I know what
you're talking about. Do you remember that film? And it was a really good film. It was a really good film, and I liked it. I really liked it. So Lee would, he at that time was living in New York, but he had family in Philly, and he was part of the film festival crowd. So he was honored one year for up and coming director. So what the Film Society would do during the 2-week festival, this was in April, so I hosted the director brunch at my place, at my loft, and he came. He was the honoree, and we had the best time. Really super nice guy. But he had done those 2 indie films, and those films were funded by local Philadelphians who had the wherewithal to write checks at that time. And The Woodsman was funded by Brooke Lenfest, who was the son of Jerry Lenfest, who now owns the Inquirer, right? But at that time, he was a cable company that had sold to Comcast, the Lenfest Foundation, the Lenfest family. So Brooke had funded, if not all, that Woodsman film. So, it got, and Kevin Bacon's from Philadelphia too.
Right.
So it was sort of like a twisty indie film. And then he did the one with Helen Mirren and Cuba Gooding Jr. And then he hit it big time when he directed The Butler, which won an Oscar. Remember that? That was a great film with Forrest Whitaker. So, and then he did a few other projects. Now he's very big. He's in LA and all that. But back in those days, and this must have been 2003, 2004, that's a period of time where it was real easy to get funding from people, who had money, who were not in the business, but wanted to get involved. Those days have left,
Yes.
unfortunately, all everywhere. Now it's sort of, you have to find other ways to finance your pictures. If you go way back to the Coen brothers, who did Fargo and all these wonderful films, Big Lebowski, right? So their first film was, I think it was 1983 was the year, 83 or 84. It was called Blood Simple, and it was a thriller, and it starred Frances McDormand, who's now a huge star. She's married to one of the Coen brothers, but it was her first film, and they financed it with their credit cards and some generous friends, but it was low budget, but it made a lot of money, and it put them on the map. It really put them on the map as, indie people to watch, and so that was a very good thing for them. Their budget was $600 or $700 back then. Wow. A lot of people were in the film though, but so mine's not anywhere near that budget. But like there's ways to do it, and when you say get in the film business, it's like, well, how do you want to do that? Do you want to be a financer? Do you want to be executive producer? Do you want to direct? Do you want to be in a film? I'd say if you wanted to get in the business, I would say try to get yourself in a film in some capacity. People are always looking for talent, and you don't have to have an extensive resume or things like that. Try to take some acting classes. It's always good to have that. There is no school of directing. A lot of directors have come from either writers or from being an actor or cinematography, like Steven Spielberg. You're behind the camera a lot, and then you get in front of the camera. That is very technical. I am not a technical person. I do not go behind the camera unless I'm looking at the frame that my cinematographer shot. Mm-hmm. So I consider myself more of a creative than a technical director. You have to be both as a director, but there are some that are just more, they can set the scene up themselves with the cameras because they know, versus knowing what you want and telling someone else to do it. But if you have a very well-trained cinematographer, you don't necessarily have to know how to use the, light the room with the camera, because you have people to do that. It's good that you know it. Mm-hmm. But I would say for people getting involved, a little late to do that tech stuff. That stuff has to start early in life. It's kind of like a trade, if you will, because it's photography. It's like somebody saying, oh, gee, I want to be a photographer, so I'm going to take these pictures and whatever. There's so many elements involved. There's lighting. There's a lot of layers to shooting a scene and different lenses, and it's a process. So you should have some professional training before you decide to go and start being a cinematographer. And then of course there's sound and lights and all that stuff, and a lot of this is learned in school. School of Performing Arts has all that down there on Broad Street. I hope it's still there. It was a great university, right?
That's no longer there.
University Arts is gone.
Wait a minute, University of Arts.
It was right there.
I'm thinking about, no, that's still there. I'm thinking about the one that was for profit. That one is gone. Oh, what's the name of that school? That's gone. Oh, goodness gracious. There was one right there, Broughton Chestnut. That's gone. But the University of Arts is still there.
Still there. Yeah. Yes. Yes. I think that's the only one down there that is considered a film, has some film elements to it. There, of course, a lot of people go to New York, the Tisch School and all that. And of course, there's LA and stuff like that. But there's just so many layers to a film. Screenwriting is tricky, right? Everybody wants to be a screenwriter. And they used to have these classes in Santa Monica by this, it's called Screenwriters Boot Camp, right? So you'd go, I took a couple courses there. It's expensive, and they kind of say, oh, hey, anybody can be a screenwriter, or anybody can write a screenplay. No, you can't. It's no. And then once you've written it, what are you going to do with it? Unless you're going to direct it yourself, and then nobody wants your screenplay. Everybody's got a screenplay. Oh, here's my screenplay. There's millions of writers who have their scripts everywhere, up and down, and they don't go anywhere. Unfortunately, it's just not enough people making film, and you have to have somebody. I mean, now I'm seeing more trends on films coming out of books. They're optioning books and doing films out of books because it's easy. Why? Because studios, it's cheaper. Studio can get an idea. Like, oh, okay, this is a best-selling novel in the New York Times bestseller list. Let's make this a movie. We have it. It's already down. Let's just hire a screenwriter. He'll take it out of the book. We option the book. We cast it. That's always been an easy thing for studios. I see it coming back. I'm talking about, when I say easy, I'm talking about ideas and concepts.
Yes.
So you don't have to think about it.
Right.
Because back in the day, the studios, when they had all these people in-house, they would have the writer collective. They have the writer room, and all the writers would sit in a room and they'd think of the next movie they're going to write. And that's when there was plenty of money. Now their studios are empty. I mean, I don't even know when they shoot in a studio anymore. They're used for tours, right? But when I say studio, I mean the actual building. Like you got Paramount, you got Fox, you got Universal, but you got that theme park connected to it. So that brings in their revenue there. But they used to have so they would sit around and brainstorm what ideas, what could we write, and then those days are gone. Everything is freelance now. Freelance. I mean, they call it Amazon Studio. I don't think there is no studio. Mm-hmm. There's just people like us people will go on a Zoom call and they'll start talking about okay, we'll go hire that one. Okay, right. Call this one up, get this one in, and then when they go into production, they'll set up a production office somewhere because they have to have a central location for the equipment and the crew. But those nobody has studios anymore where those things. They all take ideas from, books, magazine articles, news stories that come out. I'm sure we're going to see some more war movies coming out, some more period pieces coming out of, our current state of affairs that we're in globally.
Plenty of those.
Yeah. I mean, there's going to be something. So, but there's always that need for content, and there's always that need for entertainment. It's just gotten very expensive to do it.
So what's next?
So what's next? I'm meditating on this mouse situation. It won't be a horror mouse because that's going to be done already by two. I believe they're independent too. I'm going to have a new concept. I'm thinking more on the lines of, I'm going to stay on the dark side. I'm going to stay on the psychological side. I'm thinking about a story that's similar to Donnie Darko.
Oh, yeah. Wow. That's a good movie.
Only it's a mouse.
Oh, okay.
And it's a woman, not a man.
Okay.
And she's not in high school. But she's young. She's in her 20s. And then I'm going to bring that Looking for Mr. Goodbar. Remember that?
Yes.
We're going to bring those two. I'm going to bring those two thoughts together, concepts together, without infringing on anybody, but sort of, nobody owns that concept of a woman going to bars. Nobody owns that thought, and nobody owns any thought of talking to creatures that may or may not be there. That doesn't. So that would be my narrative for shooting this, for shooting my next film. While I do have the script for Hollow State 2, but I want to see if it should only be a standalone film, or later, maybe in a year or so, it'll come up that everyone's seen it. You know how you can also indie films too, how they can have a new life is if one of your actors gets in a big film.
Yes.
And then everyone's watching all their films.
Yep.
So that's a possibility for some of my actors. So yeah, new year, new thoughts, you know. That's my current thought.
Beautiful. So where can people find you?
So I'm on TikTok, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. They can call me. I don't know. I don't know. They can call me and chat, you know. I'm very open. I have a lot of friends. I don't mind. If you want to talk to me anytime, you know. I'm thinking this coming year, I'm going to take a Philly nostalgia trip.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm going to go and see all my old haunts and friends, and, you know, do that. I'd love to do something in Philly too. I really would. I don't know if I'll get to this part, but in the next few years, I definitely want to shoot something in Philly.
Oh, okay.
I'd love to shoot something in Philly. That would be a great thing to do.
I just have to a lot.
I've heard that. You know, when I left, it was the heyday. I had such a wonderful time there. I mean, everything was just. Then I hear it did change. I did change, you know. But you have a new mayor now, right?
Yes.
New mayor, yeah. And who knows what's going to happen? Aren't you having a new governor soon too?
No, we have about 2 to 3 more years with him, because he.
Oh, that's right. That's Josh Shapiro.
Yeah.
Gosh, I remember him.
Thank goodness we just got him.
I remember Josh from years and years ago. What was he before? Was he a state rep or something before? He was something before. But you know, I read the Inquirer and Daily News every day, so I keep abreast of everything going on, because you know, a lot of these people I still know. I had remembered them from my, you know, I did this 15 years. I wrote for the city paper, Philadelphia City Paper, which back then was everybody was reading papers. You know?
Yes. different time. Well, first of all, you're on TikTok.
Under Mary G, yeah.
Okay, Mary G, because we need to know your handle so people can actually follow you. And where can they see the film?
Amazon Prime Video. It's called Holistay, HOLISTAY, and it's on Tubi for free.
So, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you visit Amazon or Tubi. And again, Tubi is free, and you don't even have to sign up for Tubi. You can just click and go watch. Please, please, please support Mary Patel-Gallagher's film, because as independent filmmakers, we definitely need every bit of support that we can get. Because here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, when you go on an Amazon, and especially when you go on a Tubi, that algorithm really, really helps. And you know, hey, especially with Tubi, because the more you watch, the more ads get run, and the bigger that check gets. So that's what this is all about. It is what it is. Hey, at the end of the day, this is a business. But Mary, this has been absolutely amazing. You definitely have to come back.
I will. I'd love to come back.
Yes, I would love to talk to you more about turning Holistay into a book, and possibly that second movie. And you know what? I forgot to ask you one question. You got distribution before your film was released, did you not?
I did.
How did you do that? Because I want you to explain that, because that's extremely important for independent filmmakers who say, I'm going to make a film, but they make the film and then they want to find distribution after, as opposed to doing it the right way, which you did by securing distribution before you shot the film, so that when it was done, it was ready to go. So can you talk about that briefly?
Yes, it's definitely try to get a deal down before you shoot your film. And it's a little tricky, but that's where your networking has to come in. You have to spend time networking and going to some festivals, like, you know, if you're on the East Coast, try to get to the ones in New York. well, actually the big one for people in, there's South by Southwest, and then there's Sundance, and then there's the AFM in November, but and you can look up online all the festivals. There's about 500 of them. But that's where you have to go and pitch and network and talk to people. And so, and again, when I get back to the collective of filmmakers, that's also a good opportunity to find out and talk to people and sort of pitch your idea. And if you can do that before you shoot your film, then that's very key, because that will not only help you get some more financing, but it will help you know that your film will have a life after it's shot, because there's so many films that just never see the light of day, and being on that board of the film festival all those years, and I used to see all the films, and some of them were really, really good, and they never got distribution. So that was it, and so a lot of these markets too in the festivals, they will, distributors will buy films, so you could do that route too, but it's hard first of all, it's very hard to get into a film festival today, because if you don't have Brad Pitt in your film, it's very hard to get your film in. So, I don't know what happened to the independent film market, because that kind of fell off the way. They always want to know who's in your film. Well, you could have really good actors, but just because you didn't hear of them doesn't mean they're not good. I mean, everyone starts somewhere.
Yes.
Getting back to Brad Pitt as an example, he was in a chicken suit outside a fast chicken place, waving a sign on La Brea Boulevard 30 years ago. And some talent agent happened to be driving down the street and saw him. So it's like, oh, okay. But you all have to start somewhere, right? So you have to look at it like that. If you can secure a deal and reach out to reach out on your own too. Like, look up indie distributors, look up who would be in, but you have all your concept organized, like don't just get on the phone and, well, they won't, it's hard to get anyone on the phone, but, emails, query letters, send out and say, hey, my name is, and I have this, and I'd love to meet up with you or talk to you if you're going to be at this festival or that festival, or if you're in town, or could, or try to find out like where does so-and-so go, like, I'm not saying you're going to stalk them, but you're going to conveniently bump into them, and you're going to say, I'm trying to, I have this film I'm doing, I'm going to, and they'll give you if they're interested, they'll give you an LOI letter, but you have to meet their terms and conditions. Just because they're not going to agree totally until it's finished. But if you stick to the terms and conditions of the contract and what they've said, there's a good chance they'll distribute it, right? But it's not going to be guaranteed until you finish it. Why? Because you never know what the child is going to look like till it's born, right? So, and I use that as an example because that's a perfect example of a film. You don't know what it's going to be until you see it on the screen. So you could tell the distributor up and down all day of the week, it's going to be this, 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 and this, until they actually see it. It's not going to be a deal. And that's just the way it's going to be, unfortunately. But you would get an LOI, and they do know you, and they're going to keep tabs on you while you're shooting. Like they'll say, where are we today? And you give them updates, because what they do is they have timelines for distribution. They have certain timelines when they need to release things, because they're the ones that make the deals with what we call the networks, which is all streaming. Very few of them are theatrical release, because it's a lot of money to put films in a movie house, right, in a theater. So we're basically talking about the streaming platforms, which is what everybody is watching anyway. I mean, I would love to see more indie films but those art house films are dropping off. I mean, are the Ritz theaters still in town?
Yes.
The Ritz theaters? Okay. So because you're in a big metropolitan city where, like New York, that would and LA has them, but we don't have them out here in Vegas. We don't have art house. We have, you're going to see the latest, A-list movies that you're going to see. And also you have to remember, if you're like in the Midwest or the South or some, they don't have art house movies. They just have malls with movies like you're going to see, the big five, so to speak, right? So your platform as an indie filmmaker is always going to be streaming, because that's where the money is, and it costs a lot of money to put it in theaters. So you could do a limited release, which would be New York and LA, and they still do that even with bigger films. They'll run them for 2 weeks and then they go right to streaming. Why? Because they can make their money better on a streaming platform. But to get into the purview of a distributor, it's really, really important to do all your homework and legwork first. Find out who's distributing indie films, and then look at what you're doing, and does your film fit their niche? Some only do horror, some only do drama, some are special niche films, cultural films. So you have to say to yourself, look and do your research and find out, and then reach out to them. But you have to have a business plan in place. You can't just say, hi, I have an idea. No, you have to have everything, have your script done, have your cast out, have all your ducks in a row. Say, this is what this is what when I want to shoot it. And they don't fund, by the way. Distributors don't fund. You have to do all that yourself. They will only distribute. Okay, so don't reach out to a distributor for financing. Now, some wear two hats. Some are producers and they're distributors. But unless you're hooked in to somebody who, that's another thing. If you could hook into some other production that's bigger than yours and has all these elements in and join in that production, then you get known to this distributor. Mm. And then if you have the wherewithal, if you have $5,000 or $6,000 or $10,000 that you could spare, I know it's a tight world right now, but it doesn't even have to be that. It could be $2,500. Okay, indie movies sometimes are need extra funding at the end, like they might be short $5,000 or they might be short $6,000 because they went over, and so to get through the post-production they need some extra dollars. If you joined in, then you get a credit, then you get a name in there as an executive producer, and then now you're in this group of people, and then you look and see who distributed this film, and then you sort of do your own thing. Now you've watched this, and you start to create your own environment, and then you go and you reach out to said distributor and say, I was a executive producer on this film that you distributed, and I'm thinking about doing my own project, and here's what it is, and be very specific and get their attention on it. And they'll say, that sounds interesting, or no, we don't do that. Mm-hmm. We don't do those type of films. Then they don't do that type of film. But they maybe would know someone who did. Or you could change what film you're doing. But you have to feel comfortable with what you're doing. And don't ever do something because you think it's popular, because that changes. What's hot today is cold next week, right? Or I don't mean literally next week, but like next year. Trends change all the time. So just do what you want to do, because if you don't like what you're doing, no one else is. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. You have to like it first.
Right. So I felt comfortable with this Celtic horror and these people, and I could do this. And, if somebody said to me, you need to add all these other elements in to make anybody, watch it, and it should be more gory, it should be more horrible. And I said, look, I don't even watch those type of movies. Right. How am I supposed to make one if I'm not even going to watch it? Mm-hmm. And it's a recipe for failure. You have to be comfortable with this kind of genre. So that, and then the other part of having, a networking capacity to get into, finding distribution. There are enough indie distributors around, but you have to, and joining in other filmmakers' projects. It's not hard to find if you meet up, join up, start looking around who's doing what, acting, who's, reach out to local groups or something and social sites and see who's around. You can also make your movie and hope someone picks it up, but that's always a risk. And doesn't have to be indie either. I mean, there's quite a bit of bigger productions that go on the bigger markets, and they'll say, such and such was picked up at Cannes this week by, Universal Studios or something, right? Because studios don't always make their own stuff. They go to film markets too, but you have to have somebody in your film to get their attention, those kind of people, right? So and these actors are hard to get. And then that's a whole other area, because even if you know the actor and like the actor, and I went through this before in some other projects I had, you have to go through their agent and manager, and their agent and manager might be like, nah, not happening. They're not going to do that. Even though the actor says, yeah, I want to do it.
Right.
Their agent says, no, not for you, buddy. Nah. And that's happened to me. That happened to me already. They were, or they'll tell you they'll do it for a certain amount of money and you're agreed. And then the agent comes along and is like, oh no, my client won't do anything less than $250,000. And you're like, really? That's not what he told me. But then they have this contract with their agent that they have to honor.
Right.
So they can't break it. They can't break contract with their manager. So it's a big song and a dance around the maypole. So you just really have to have the patience and the experience comes from getting out there and doing it. But getting back to your, you asked me before if somebody wants to do a movie, do it. It might not be easy. Hey,
it never is. It never is.
What is?
If it was easy, everybody would be doing this, but it's not so. It only takes it's a select crazy few like us that want to do this. But Mary, this has been absolutely phenomenal, ladies and gentlemen. You just got a masterclass on what you should be doing as far as distribution is concerned. So if you don't listen to anything else about this podcast, listen to the last 10 minutes. Because it will help you be a better filmmaker, and also something that I always stress, a better business person, because at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, this is a business and you have to treat it as such. So again, Mary Patel-Gallagher, thank you so much for joining me on my first podcast of 2024. And I did it with a Philadelphia native, which is absolutely phenomenal and so special. And again, I would love for you to come back, because I really want to talk about the book that you have coming out or are about to write, Holiday, the book, and possibly Holiday, the movie.
That's right.
And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I will end it as I always do. Love this like a hobby, but treat it like a business. Everyone have an absolutely phenomenal night.
You too. Thanks. Thanks, Floyd.
You are so welcome. Have a great 2024.
You too. We'll stay in touch.
Yes.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Stay in touch. Okay. Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye-bye.